Why did I bring this home? I don't know. I bought this about 3 weeks ago. It was at a time where I was having trouble finding a wood dresser this size that would fit in my Tucson. This was posted for $50. Now, I know to take the descriptions on Facebook Marketplace with a grain of salt. From the picture, it looked like it was oak. So I reached out to her and she said, yes, it's available. But when we got to the house and I took out this top drawer, I knew that this piece was not a quality piece. It may have oak wood on the drawer fronts. The rest of it is pressboard. Typically, I would left it there. But around that time, I had done that 2 or 3 times. So maybe that was one reason why, for Kevin's sake in particular, I thought we're going to bring this one home. Now, what I didn't realize until I got it in the car, that the sides at the base of the dresser are pretty badly damaged, one side more than the other. I need to mend all that. It's also very dated. The hardware that came with it that I've already taken off is pretty dated. The knobs on the top drawers were these little lion ring pulls. That's why I'm calling this the lion dresser. And some of the drawers even had some fake keyholes. Yeah, all of that is taken off. Now, last night I thoroughly cleaned the piece inside and out. I started with Dawn dish detergent and warm water. I then switched to some Simply Green. So this piece is clean and ready to go. With the piece upside down, you can really see the damage on the bottom. Clearly, this was probably sitting in something wet and the moisture swelled the fibers in this board and it started to peel the very, very thin veneer on the sides. It's not as bad on this side, but there is some damage right here that you can't see with it upside down. I don't see that there's any way I can salvage this very thin veneer or really the need to. It's pretty buckled in itself. So I'm going to rip off what I can. I'll probably have to dig out some of this press board and then I'll put some Bondo on the top in hopes that I can just sand everything smooth. Now, if you see that line right there, I thought it would be easier if I scored the wood first before I tried to chip it away. It wasn't. So I just created another boo-boo I'm gonna have to fill up later. And that little corner needs to be rebuilt. Going to add some little brad nails in first, just for the Bondo to be able to really adhere to. Bondo is a 2-part epoxy. You've seen me use it before. It has this stinky, gooey mess that when you mix it up with that hardening cream and get that one uniform color, then it's activated and ready to use. And you need to use it really quickly because it dries very fast. I'm just glopping this stuff on because there's a big cavity I need to fill. I probably mixed up 3 separate little piles of Bondo, but I'm glopping it on. I want it thick enough so that when I sand it, I can get a completely smooth surface. It was kind of like frosting a cake. There was no way that I could attach this piece of wood with any of my clamps. I was trying to make a barrier to recreate that corner with the Bondo, so I just nailed that piece of a paint stirrer in place. And it's allowing me to fill up that cavity to create a new corner. I'm going to let this dry and the other side dry. I imagine I'll need to mix a little bit more up. I can tell that's a divot there I'll need to fill, but I'm gonna let this dry as is. We're gonna run some errands. I'll come back, fill it a little bit more, wait for that to dry, and then we'll sand and see what I have. It's the next day. It wasn't until late in the evening that I came back down to the basement, and I did use some 80 grit on my DeWalt sander and started sanding. And as I suspected, as you can tell, there are areas where the Bondo that I applied is still concave. It's not filled enough to be sanded exactly smooth. So I'm going to apply a second coat of Bondo, and then right before dinner I will sand it again, and hopefully the base will be done at that point so I can turn this piece right side up and start scuff sanding. I also still need to decide before scuff sanding if I'm going to do any simple modifications to this dresser. If so, they need to be quick and easy, so we'll determine that later in the evening as well. I just finished sanding, and although it looks like a hot mess, it is, from what I can tell, smooth. So we won't know until I'll put some primer on here if I need to continue sanding, but that looks pretty good considering this was all ripped out because of the peeling veneer and swollen press board. So we'll see how that looks once it's primed. Over here, terrible lighting, same thing. I'm looking at it upside down, and that panel I wanted to remove, and I discovered that it was loose on both sides and was only held in place truly by that pin nail. So I just pried it off. Yep, look at that. So I'm going to turn this piece over and figure out what I'm going to do about the front. I'm getting somewhere, but it looks a little naked on the bottom. And I noticed that without that panel being there at all, you can see these support braces on the inside. So I made a plan to reuse these materials. So I separated the trim. I popped off that decorative piece. I removed a gajillion nails. And then I drew a line where I was going to cut that front panel to eliminate the curves. And yes, I had to cut by hand with a saw. And I will tell you, it was challenging, and that very day, we got in the car, went to Home Depot, and bought Mama a new DeWalt jigsaw. I dry fitted everything in place and made sure everything looked good, and then assembled it. So that would come down. I glued both sides of that panel on the left and the right. And if you can tell, it just slides into, see how I'm hammering it in? It slid in. With a little bit of glue there and some pin nails, I'll put everything together. I did add these paint stirrers. You see me use them all the time. I love them. Very base of the piece had exposed wood fibers. My thought is if I could at least put this wood here, then at least there'll be some barrier between any moisture and those fibers. So that's what that was for. I'm going to switch to 150. I'm going to scuff sand the whole piece, and then after dusting it, we'll prep for primer. Now, just to recap, when you scuff sand, you're not sanding down to bare wood. You're simply creating a scratch on the surface for your primer and paint to stick to. But in this case, I did go through the finish a little bit because I was sanding that Bondo smooth. And what happens typically is I find I need to fill in some little divots with some wood filler as well, as you saw. And then I completed the sanding by hand. I was getting ready to start priming when I realized there was a hump here. You couldn't see it, but I could feel it, and I knew that once it was painted, it would be very obvious. So I just took my carbide scraper and I scraped out a chunk down to this press board. So what I'm going to do is put in a couple little pin nails here, maybe 3, and build this back up with some Bondo. It looks a lot better than I thought. Yep, smooth. I don't even feel the ridge where the Bondo starts. It's very smooth. Oh my gosh, that is much better. Much, much better. I'm going to be using this Zinzerbin shellac-based primer. This primer is amazing. It is actually alcohol-based. I keep saying it's oil-based. It's not. It's alcohol-based. It'll dry quickly and it won't interfere with any exposed press board and make them swell anymore. In fact, it'll seal it so that when I do go to paint on top, all of that press board will be sealed in. I don't spray this. I'll be rolling it and then using a throwaway bristle brush to get all the details in there. I'm just going to show you a quick snippet of how I primed it. You'll notice that once I get the primer on, I keep going over it and I'm using essentially no touch here. I'm just trying to smooth out these little white lines that are created. See that right there? That's created by the sides of the roller. So after I put the paint in place, I lightly go in the opposite direction to smooth those lines out because they will show up as texture under the paint if they're not taken care of. Priming is done, and overall I think it looks really, really good. This front drawer had one of those fake locks, and obviously I did not cover or fill in those hardware marks very well. I'll have to do that when this dries, but overall I think this looks good. Oh, and the top where I patched it, you can't even tell. It was right here. That looks awesome. Yay! I lightly sanded the piece to knock off any ridges that I didn't smooth out all the way or anything that landed in the primer, and then dusted it off and was ready for paint. Now this is one of the areas that I had to really work on to repair that damage. It doesn't look great now, but once it was painted, it really did look much, much better. I used some paintable caulk to fill in some gaps here and there. I just applied it with my finger, pushed it in, and then wiped off the excess with a baby wipe. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm looking out the window. The weather looks pretty bad. It's supposed to be dropping in temperatures. By evening, it's supposed to be freezing. So with the piece outside, I want to get at least one good coat sprayed on it before I need to bring it in or into the garage. Now, I'm using a color called Simply Sage in a paint line I don't care for. I've had a bad experience with them and even worse in their customer service, but when I bought the paint, I bought 3 different colors. It's here. I might as well give it a try. I hope I don't regret it. Let me go ahead and mix it up really well, get it filtered into my sprayer, and then out there to spray quickly. Oh my word, this stuff is thick. I've added another dash of water. Realistically, I've probably thinned this 20%. It's a lot. Oh my word. I don't want to thin it anymore, but it's pretty thick. I always test my spray pattern on a piece of cardboard first. See, I'm adjusting the paint. Looks like I was turning it down a little bit. Once I get the paint flow correct, then I take it to the actual piece of furniture. What I'd like to do is spray this side of the piece first. It's against the house, so that I can push the dresser all the way back as far as possible before I start spraying everything else. When I need to spray a tight area, as you notice, I turned the nozzle sideways a little bit. It creates a very small pinpoint area of paint. You've got to turn your paint flow down. I tested the pattern so I can get into those tight areas. And when I'm done, I'll put the nozzle back up so it's facing straight up and down. You might see it. And then adjust the paint flow again and continue spraying. It's a really pretty color. This is the area and here that had so much swelling I had to dig it out and then refill the hole I had made with Bondo and sand it smooth, and it looks phenomenal. So I was looking over the back and it says that it dries to the touch in typically 1 to 2 hours. Now since I thinned it with water, then I'm going to assume it's going to take closer to the 2 hours. And then it does say you can recover or put another coat of paint on it after it's dry to the touch. So let's see, maybe I can get 2 coats of this on there today before it gets too cold outside. So this is absolutely insane, but it's a little over an hour. The paint is dry. 2 coats of paint on that piece, dried and ready to be top coated. That's something to be said for this paint. So it does take 24 to 48 hours to fully cure and does not require a top coat, but since this is going to be a dresser, I'm going to put 2 coats of poly on top of it anyway. And it's 12:30. I'm gonna go ahead and start it now. It's a windy day, not the most ideal day to be spraying poly on a piece outdoors, but I'm gonna give it a whirl. And just on cue, something blew into the paint. I sprayed 2 coats of poly with a light sanding and dusting off in between. All I had to do was drill in the holes for the drawers and put in that pretty hardware. I did also line the drawers off camera, and then I was done. So let's take a peek back at its original state and how it turned out when I was done. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and leave me a comment as to what you think.